Hello and welcome to SuperLead Insights, where we share inspirational, insightful and actionable content to advance your leadership excellence. Consider this. How do you as a leader or part of the leadership team get your people to fall in love with your strategy and embrace their role in it? Many leaders fall in this trap of thinking that a killer strategy with all its bells and whistles is all they need to take their company to the next level, or in today's environment, to stay in business. But even the most brilliant strategies needs people to implement. And that's why today we're talking about promise-based approach to strategy execution. Now, just for us to be on the same page, this promise-based approach to strategy execution is rooted in a principle that says that when employees are committed to a strategy and their actions are based off a promise, their output is a lot more elevated than if they are mildly invested. Sal and Spinoza told Harvard Business Review that promises are at the heart of every company and they help ensure business gets done. The idea of promises is in business may sound a bit weird. Aren't we as employees there to carry out instructions and follow the lead of the executive? Theoretically, yes. But for leaders who are faced with executing a challenging turnaround strategy, a big pivot, or are trying to conquer new markets, dishing out instructions won't cut it. Promises aren't a nice to have, but are at the core of your team executing cohesively. In fact, Sal and Spinoza argue that many challenges leaders face, such as disengaged employees, lack of organizational agility, and the improperly executed strategies, stem from the broken or poor crafted promises. Now that's boldness. So, now that we have kind of highlighted the importance of this, what are the really necessary steps for getting promise-based strategy execution right? Firstly, you have to invite your team to sort of check out your new strategy, to introduce the big picture, explain the direction, and walk them through the vision. And when you're doing this, it is important to understand that you need to be as inspiring and as realistic as you can be. Your team likely know your limitations better than anyone else. They know the depth of the skill that resides in your organization. They even know how enabling or restricting your culture may be. They know how robust your systems are and whether or not they can hold this strategy. In fact, this is worrying. Research shows that 70% of IT workers have been involved in projects they knew will fail from the very beginning. The next step really is to take a deep breath and ask your team to give their feedback, and specifically ask them to point out the weak areas of the strategy that you've just presented. And as leaders, we like to think that we have all the bases covered in the business and have considered all worst case scenarios. But often the thing that sinks the ship is not a huge iceberg, but it's the little hole no one thought was a big deal. And as your team highlights those shortcomings, it's important that you listen in and engage. That's your opportunity to get them to see themselves as fellow problem solvers. Most people will highlight challenges within their scope, grab that opportunity and make them the owner of that area and be part of the solution. Making a promise sounds simple, but there's actually an art to it. To avoid strategy implementation failure, I think it's worthwhile to talk about how to really make a good request and a good promise. A good promise should have the following key 5 qualities. 1, it has to be public. Like any good social contract, a promise made in front of other team members won't be easy to abandon, because employees will naturally want to protect their reputation and their trustworthiness. Number 2, it should be active. Promises should be made after careful consideration about the actual requirements needed and the journey to implement. If not, they are more likely to fall through. Quality number 3, they have to be voluntary. Promises are more likely to fail if people are under pressure to make them, either because they want to be seen as good team members, or they're trying to avoid looking like maybe they might just be incompetent. So for a promise to really be meaningful, the person making it must have the space and that confidence to decline a request and make an alternative suggestion. The leaders should create that environment where their team members can say, you know what, that is not feasible, but instead, here is what I'm offering to deliver to reach the same objective. As you know, when a person makes a promise willingly, they are more likely to give it their all and go that extra mile that is required in these unprecedented times. The 4th requirement is that the promise must be explicit and specific. A clear promise is critical to avoid multiple interpretations and misunderstandings. Saying what you mean is essentially important when dealing with big teams where buzzwords are thrown around often. Promise needs to be backed up with more concrete details, such as basic assumptions that are being made, the exact demands on time and resources, and the exact deliverables and timelines. And here we often see strategy documents filled with buzzwords such as we will innovate and pivot and be agile and reach new heights. Those aren't good enough. They have to be specific. Let's shy away from the buzzwords of the day. So lastly, effective promises have to be mission-based. A leader must explain the reasoning behind the direction and the request and the success that will be achieved as a result of the effective execution. So promise-based approach to strategy execution is especially relevant in today's environment, as the realities of these dispersed remote teams hit home, creating a greater sense of community among colleagues where they commit to the company's mission. They see themselves as playing an important role has never been more crucial. And there's a significant correlation between employee engagement and business performance. But don't just take my word for it, because according to the Hay Group, companies with the most engaged employees report revenue growth at a rate 2.5 times greater than competitors with lower levels of engagement. So promises matter, because if you're a leader today, you're more likely to be asking more from your team. Companies are asking staff to break out of their comfort zone, to flex those muscles than they have done before, to upskill and implement rapidly, and approach tasks with a new purpose, and to navigate these unproven roadmaps. And as we've seen, traditional management styles are starting to fall short. So trying out and investing in some of these dynamic approaches that sometimes might sound a little bit weird, like securing promises, are no longer nice to haves, but they are the key actions that underpin real business outcomes. So if you like what you have heard today, please hit the subscribe button and share this video with anyone you believe will be inspired by it. I will also encourage you to follow us on our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and on LinkedIn. If you require a leadership coach or our support with your strategic, operational, and leadership initiatives, we would love to hear from you. You can find our contact details on our website at www.superlead.co.za. Until then, go out there and super lead.